Yeah. So I was just telling you that we just have this urinary system homework. Okay. Once you submit the homework for the urinary system, okay, and the due date of the lab report 3 is today. So I might grade them tomorrow, your lab report 3. And once you will have grades for lab report 3 also in the model, and you will finish submitting the urinary system, okay, then I'm going to send you an email saying that, up to this date, you need to let me know if you have any concerns about your grades anywhere in the model, be it your midterm 1, be it your midterm 2, be it your homeworks, be it your attendance, be it your any concerns if you have, right? You need to let me know that before that due date, which I'm going to send. Let's say I send a due date like 2nd of May, right? So up to 2nd of May, for example, you should tell me that if you have any concerns, right? If you think that you had, I mean, 10 out of 10 in your lab report 2, for example, right? And maybe there was a typo error. I typed 9.5, right? Something like this, right? If you have any concerns, but please make sure that you need to tell me before the due date, which I will send you on the Moodle, let's say 2nd of May. So please make sure after 2nd of May, I will not be able to make any changes in your grades. Please pay attention, everyone, right? So after that due date, which I will send you on the Moodle, okay? Yes, and the digester as well. Okay, so once I meant because this is the last chapter, right? You still need to do homework for this chapter, right? So once that date, which I will send it on the Moodle, after that date, okay, I will not be able to make any changes in your grades. So whatever issues you have, even if you have the attendance issues, just resend me your emails. Okay. If you think that I've not replied or your attendance has not been resolved, please resend me your emails. Right. So now I will go one by one into each and every student, and whatever issues are there and they need to be solved before that due date. Okay. Because PHSF exam is the last exam. The moment we finish the exam, right, quickly I will be uploading the grades maybe within 12 hours. Excuse me. Right, so there will be no grade changes after the final exam, right? So you will be able to see your grades, the way we did in last semester, right? So you will be able to see your grades, right, excluding the midterm 3 and final exam before that. So after final exam, if there is any concern about midterm 3 or the final exam, only those queries will be resolved. Other queries will not be resolved. So it becomes your duty to bring into my notice before the due date, right? So no changes in the grades after the final exam, please, right? So only the final exam and the midterm 3 will be taken care of. Is it okay to everyone? Did you all understand? Yes, this is very, very important, right? Because this is the same thing which we did last semester, right? We need to make sure all the issues are resolved before itself, because we cannot change the grades after the final exam. Okay, so that was about it, and let's begin our class and let's try to finish, I mean, the chapter. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the blood composition. Okay, depends upon, okay, definitely diet is a very important part. Okay, and then we have the metabolism in our body, and of course the urine output. Okay, these three factors are there which maintain the composition of our blood. Okay, and then of course we know that kidneys have four important roles to play. We discussed the excretory role of kidney previously. Okay, and now we'll discuss how the blood pH is being maintained. Okay, the role of kidney in maintaining the electrolyte balance or maintaining the water balance, right? So this is basically what you studied in chapter number 9 about the hormones, the role of hormones actually. Okay, and there are some things, which are based on your cardiovascular system as well, about maintaining the blood pressure. because blood pressure plays an important role in the process of filtration. Okay, we'll talk about all these things now. Okay, so before we start that, we need to know that how important water is. Okay, we know that water in our body is almost 60% is of the body consists of water. Okay, in the adult males, and in females it's 50%. Okay, in small children they have more water than the adults, 75%, and elderly men have less water than the adult males or females, so almost 45%. Okay, and then we know that water is very very important. It's called as a universal solvent. Okay, in which many solutes of our body, they can dissolve, right? It forms the medium of many things in the body, be it the tears, be it the saliva, be it the digestive juices, be it the pancreatic juices, be it the bile, be it the cerebrospinal fluid. So all these things have the water base, right? So that is why water is a very very important part of our body, right? Now if you realize here, you didn't ask me a question, why females have, okay, less water as compared to males. If you see here, females have only 50% of water, while as male have water more than us. Why is it so? Can anyone tell me the answer about it? Why males have less water than females? Yes, ladies. Who has the question? Who has the answer for this? Yes, Adil, Ragad, Al Johara, Rawa, Shatha, Rani, Noora. Maybe because they have larger kidney. Cute. No. Because we have more tissues running. No. Okay, I'll tell you. The reason is why females have less water than the males. No, not the size of the body. No, Munira, no. The reason is basically females have more fat than the males. Okay, and if we have more fat in than the male, so how is it going to help in the water content, right? Usually the adipose tissue, the fatty tissue in our body, okay, it has less water because it's more concentrated with the fat, right? So less females have more adipose tissue, and adipose tissue has less water content in it, and this is the reason why females have less water as compared to the males, because we have more fat than the males. Okay, so obviously people with more fat will have low water in their body. This is the reason behind that. Is it clear? So that's why females have lower water content than the males, as we have more adipose tissue than the males. Okay. Okay, then when we talk now, this table is important. Okay, so this is a diagram from your book. It basically tells you about the major fluid compartments of the body, how water is distributed in the body. Okay, so if you observe it very carefully, you see that 60% of the body weight is the water, isn't it? And out of this 60%, okay, majority of it, okay, is the interstitial so is the intracellular fluid, this one. Okay, so out of 60%, 40% is the intracellular fluid, right? We call it an ICF. So what is an intracellular fluid? Intracellular fluid is the fluid which is present inside the cells. So it is inside the cells. Okay, So that means if this is a cell present in our body, so whatever fluid is in the cytoplasm, right? Right, this is all, even in the nucleus, right? It's all considered as the intracellular fluid, which is almost majority of it, like 40% of it, right? So then out of 60, 40% is intracellular fluid. Then what is 20%? 20% is called as an extracellular fluid, which is about 15 liters in the body. Okay. And this extracellular fluid is based. What is extracellular fluid? Extracellular fluid is the fluid outside the cells. Outside the cells, whatever fluid is there, together we call it the extracellular fluid, right? But within this extracellular fluid, it also has two compartments, right? So majority of it, out of 20%, 80% of it is we have the interstitial fluid. Okay, what is the interstitial fluid? Interstitial fluid is present in the microscopic spaces between the tissue cells. So that means if I have one cell here, I have another cell here, I have another cell here, another cell here. So do you see these spaces in between? So these spaces are filled with the interstitial fluid. So everywhere you will have fluid, right? So this is filled with the interstitial fluid. Okay. So spaces between the tissue cells contain this interstitial fluid. Then what is plasma? 20% of it is plasma. So this is a basically place where most of the students make mistake. They think that plasma is present within the blood vessels. So if the question says that what is plasma, is it an intracellular fluid or an extracellular fluid, they think that plasma is within the blood vessels, so it is an intracellular fluid. But no, you have to remember that plasma is an extracellular fluid. Okay, because it's present outside the cells of the body, so it is considered as the extracellular fluid. Okay, and what are the other things which are considered as an extracellular fluid? Okay, along with the plasma over here, okay, we also have here synovial fluid, for example, between the joints, the synovial joints, that is also considered as an extracellular fluid. Serous fluid, we spoke about the serous fluid, right? Between the different layers of the peritoneum, the visceral and the parietal peritoneum, visceral pleura and the parietal pleura, right? So that also is an extracellular fluid. Lymph is also considered extracellular fluid. Cerebrospinal fluid, right, in the brain, it is an extracellular fluid. Or gastric secretions produced in the in the stomach, right? They're also considered as the extracellular fluid. Okay, is it clear to everyone? What is the difference between extracellular fluid and the intracellular fluid and the types of it? So we just simply said that we have 60% of the fluid in our body is water. Okay, out of 60%, 40% is an intracellular fluid within the cell, and 20% is an extracellular fluid outside the cell. Out of 20%, 80% of it is an interstitial fluid present between the cells, and 20% is the fluid which is present, for example, in the blood vessels, right, in the synovial fluid, in the gastric secretions, serous fluid, right? They all are considered as the what? The extracellular fluid, right? Okay, great. It's the same thing. Okay. So then if you see here, nutrients and the wastes are exchanged between the intracellular fluid and the plasma through the interstitial fluid. Okay. So blood plasma transports nutrients as well as waste between the cells and the external environment. Look at this. If you see here, this is the blood plasma, the red one over here. Okay, look at this one. This is the red blood plasma over here, right? Look at this. The oxygen which is present coming from the outside is first taken into the blood or the blood plasma. then it has to go through the interstitial fluid, and then it enters the cells. Same thing with the CO2. CO2 is released by the cells, go into interstitial space, from here passes to the blood, okay, and from the blood it is released in the kidneys, okay. And then we have the nutrients from the stomach, okay. These nutrients are absorbed in the blood. From the blood it's sent to the, that it goes to the hepatic portal vein, right? And then finally they are dissolved in the interstitial spaces, and then from the interstitial spaces they can be taken in by the cells. Or even nitrogenous wastes, look at this, they're released first into interstitial spaces, then into go into the blood, right? Go into the blood, right? And from the blood, that blood is being filtered by the kidney. That's how they go out of the body. Same thing with the ions, and same thing with the water, which is basically present in the stomach, and it is absorbed through the blood and then into the interstitial space and then into the cells, right? Now, what is the difference between an electrolyte and a non-electrolyte? Can anyone tell me? Or can anyone give me example of the electrolyte and the non-electrolyte? What are electrolytes? We always hear, but oh, like sodium ions. You're right, Raneen. Yeah, very good. But what is their role? Why do we call them electrolytes? What is their role in the body? You're right, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Action potential. Yes, very good. See what happens if you ask me what are electrolytes. Electrolytes are simply, for example, if you have sodium chloride, right? Sodium chloride is an electrolyte. Why is it is an electrolyte? Because it can be dissociated into ions, right? It can in the water, when you dissolve it in water, it's dissociated into sodium and chloride, right? So electrolytes are dissociated into ions when you dissolve them in the water. Ions are what? Ions are simply these charged particles, right? So they can conduct the electricity through, that's why they are called as electrolytes. They can conduct the electricity through them, right? So these electrolytes are very, very important, as you saw, for example, that they maintain they maintain the osmolality of the blood, right? So the fluid in the blood never leaves the blood, or you can say the blood stays within the blood vessels. The reason is what? Because of the high solute concentration, isn't it? We have the high solute concentration in the blood, and imagine if this solute concentration will be, will not be maintained in the blood, right? So water will escape out, right? So that's why they are very, very important, right, in maintaining the what, the water content in the blood. Very, very important, isn't it? Yes or no? Right? In chapter blood, we studied about it, right? How important these solutes are there for the blood, right? So they are all electrolytes. And the best part about electrolytes are, since they can be dissociated into ions, right? So they're more contributed towards the solute level, right? So you see, if I have sodium and chloride, if I have magnesium chloride, right? So magnesium positive and Cl negative, right? So I have two solute instead of one. I don't have only one solute, right? So that is why they have greater osmotic power, because they maintain the solute level, right? So these electrolytes, okay, as compared to the non-electrolytes, okay. So non-electrolytes, basically they don't dissociate it into ions, so they don't play any major role in the osmotic power. They have less osmotic power. Non-electrolytes. So what are non-electrolytes? Non-electrolytes are like, for example, your glucose. Can glucose be dissociated into its ions? Yes, ladies? Do you think amino acids can dissociate into their ions? Of course not. So can we call them electrolytes? Of course not. We cannot call lipids, glucose, urea, right? And they regulate, yes, Al Johara, right? They play a very, very important role in the conduction of the nerve impulse and the muscle function, right? But most important thing is the nerve function will come later on. But if you are not able to maintain the osmotic power of the blood, right, then we might end up losing water from the blood, and the person will die, isn't it? That is why, for example, you might have seen that whenever we have, God forbid, loose motions, right? Or whenever we are doing exercise, why do we say that, oh, okay, this person has a loose motion? Don't give him only water. Maybe give him sugar water, maybe give him salt water, maybe give him electrolytes, the sports drinks. Why do we drink sports drinks, when we are doing exercises, right? So because more importantly, it is we might collapse, we might go into coma if we don't have the required electrolyte level in the body, because there will be no water in the blood. The water will escape out, right? No water in the blood would mean that we are dead, right? Do you understand what I'm trying to say, Al Johara? Right? So non-electrolytes, they don't dissociate. Like for example, glucose, right? So they have usually covalent bonds, okay? And the non-electrolytes, when they have covalent bonds, that's why those covalent bonds prevent them from the dissociating in the solution. Okay, so as a result, you cannot expect electrical charged, you know, activity in the electrolytes. Okay, so that's why electrolytes are very, very important as compared to the non-electrolytes. Okay, then then this is something. Then the thirst mechanism, right? How is, it's very, very important, the average input of the water in any form, whether we are drinking any beverages, cold drinks, tea, food, just water, right? Or metabolism happening in the body. So the intake should be equal to the output in the form of the urine. This is very, very important, right? So now, how is this, for example, how is thirst mechanism regulated in the body? How do we regulate the mechanism of thirst in the body? Okay, so thirst mechanism, if you see this diagram, I'll explain you with the diagram. Okay, what is the thirst mechanism? Whenever we have less water in the body, let's say nowadays we are fasting, right? So when we open our fast, we all are thirsty, right? We try to drink plenty of water, plenty of juices, right? Plenty of smoothies, right? The idea is basically, because the water level in the body is less. Okay, so what happens, this water level, when for example we have less water in the plasma, or we can say we have more solutes in the plasma, this is detected by the special osmoreceptors in the hypothalamus, right? So these osmoreceptors, they bring the information to the thirst center, which is in the hypothalamus, right? We discussed that previously. So thirst center is in the hypothalamus. Okay. And then what happens? So the information is brought to the hypothalamus, the big boss in the brain, right? And you will also see that whenever we have less water in the body, our mouth will be dry. It will be dry because less saliva is secreted in the mouth, right? So as a result, dry mouth also activates the thirst center present in the hypothalamus. So eventually hypothalamus will activate the thirst reflex, thirst sensation of thirst. You'll feel like, I should drink water. Okay. So as we drink water, it not only moistens our mouth, our throat, our stomach is also distended, right? As the water is absorbed from the GI tract, and eventually the solutes in the plasma will decrease, or the water in the plasma will increase. Okay, that is how this water content is being maintained in the body. Any questions about it? Are you okay? The thirst mechanism. Okay. And then the sources of water output. We not only send out water through urine or the waste like feces, we also send out water through the perspiration, okay, or through the lungs. Okay, we never know that when we expire out, we are also expiring out the water vapors, which is called as an insensible water, okay, which we cannot sense. Okay, so that is the outcome, or you can say the output of the water sources in our body. Then these whatever slides are coming up, this is something information which we already took before, right? For example, we know that ADH is very, very important in terms of what it maintains the water level in the body, isn't it? This is something which we discussed earlier in chapter number 9. It increases the water reabsorption by the kidneys, right? That is how it basically prevents the water loss in the form of urine. Okay, it increases the water reabsorption, thus playing a very, very important role in maintaining the blood volume of the body. Now, the question here is, which you don't know, which we did not study in chapter number 9, is that to which part of the kidney, okay, does the ADH basically act on? What is its target organ? Okay, its target organ is kidney for sure, but where in the kidney? You know that in kidney is made up of millions of nephrons, right? So this is the target part of the your ADH hormone, the distal convoluted tubule as well as a collecting duct. Your book says only collecting duct, but it's not only collecting duct, it is also the distal convoluted tubule. At these two places, the hormone basically acts at these two places, right? And if it feels that there is less water in the body, so the water is sent from the tubule into it's reabsorbed. Okay. So increase in the reabsorption, especially in the distal convoluted tubule and in the collecting duct, okay, is the job of the ADH. How does it help in the reabsorption? It basically, for example, inserts, let me, what's wrong with my pen? Give me a minute. Yeah, it basically inserts a lot of aquaporins here. Remember aquaporins? What are aquaporins? Last semester, chapter number 3. So when ADH is released, as you can see, the red are aquaporins. What are aquaporins, guys and girls? Look at this. They have incorporated more and more aquaporins in the DCT and in the collecting duct. Yes, Ranim, what happens because of the aquaporins? What are aquaporins? Pores for water molecule to pass. Absolutely, Ranim. The water pores, the water channels, right? So more and more water channels will be incorporated when which hormone is released? When you have ADH released. So the more water pores, the more water channels, more and more water will be reabsorbed in these two areas back into the blood. We discussed last time, reabsorption means movement of things or solute or solvent, right, whatever, from the renal tubule towards the blood. That is what happening. Water is reabsorbed in the blood, right? So in absence of ADH, what will happen? In absence of ADH, this renal tubule, okay, will have low permeability of water. It will not be able to absorb the water, right? And thus water balance cannot be maintained if ADH is absent in the body or if it's not released. Okay, so that was about the ADH. So this is something which we already discussed previously. What about the electrolyte balance? We know that aldosterone released by the adrenal cortex is a very, very important hormone, right, which regulates the blood composition as well as the blood volume. But you might think that it only regulates the sodium level. It helps in the reabsorption of sodium level, right? That's what we learned previously. But we learned that it maintains high sodium level and low potassium level in the body. But we also learned that previously that the water will follow the salt. If you absorb the sodium, water will follow, and eventually when water will follow, there will be increase in the amount of water in the blood, and the blood volume will be maintained, or blood composition will be maintained. Is it clear? So then we discussed about the RAS mechanism. What was RAS mechanism? RAS mechanism was renin, angiotensin, aldosterone system, we call it RAS mechanism. Right? This is the same thing which we learned previously. Whenever we have low blood pressure or low blood volume, which enzyme is released by the kidney, guys and girls? Kidney releases the renin, absolutely, right? Do you remember this diagram? This diagram is like everywhere, isn't it? So same diagram you had in chapter number 9, and then in cardiovascular system, and now here also, right? Kidney will release the renin, and renin will produce the what? It will produce the angiotensinogen, right? Renin will activate the angiotensin. It will convert the angiotensinogen into angiotensin 1, right? Angiotensin 1 will be converted into angiotensin 2 by the ACE, angiotensin converting enzymes. So once we have the angiotensin 2, right, it will have two effects. One, it will cause the vasoconstriction, which will eventually increase the blood pressure, right? And number two, it will stimulate the adrenal cortex to produce the what? Renin, and renin will eventually, angiotensin 2 will stimulate the adrenal cortex to release the aldosterone, right? Aldosterone will increase the amount of sodium, and as the sodium is increased, water will follow. As the water will follow, then automatically the blood pressure will be restored because of the hypervolumia, or more volume or more liquid in the blood. That's how it maintains the blood pressure as well as the blood volume, right? The aldosterone, isn't it? Any questions till now? Any questions till now, ladies? Are we okay? Okay, clear. Okay. Now, if you see here in this diagram, it says that whenever we have less water in the body, or if we have less blood pressure or less blood volume, right? As I just now told you that at that time, this will be detected by the kidney, and kidneys will produce the renin. Now, what you do not know that which part of the kidney produces the renin. We learned that previously, yes, kidney produces the renin, but you never know which part of the kidney, right? If you see here, kidney has this is the nephron, okay? Do you see here these cells? I mean, these cells, okay, in the afferent arteriole, okay, and this is a distal convoluted tubule, and the cells in the distal convoluted tubule, right? We have the modified epithelial cells and the modified smooth cells, right, in the efferent arteriole and in the distal convoluted tubule, right, which helps in, they're called as the juxtaglomerular apparatus or juxtaglomerular cells. So these juxtaglomerular cells produce what? The enzyme called as the renin, right? So they have been deliberately kept near the afferent arteriole, right? Because if the afferent arteriole senses that, oh, there is less blood pressure, right, so it cannot send the, or it before it sends the blood to the glomerulus, It needs to make sure that there is increased blood pressure, because if you remember when we discussed the filtration, we said that it's the blood pressure which basically is responsible for what, for filtering the substances from the blood into the Bowman's capsule. So blood pressure plays a very, very important role in maintaining what, the filtration. Filtration cannot take place if we have low blood pressure, right? So that is why in the loose motion, when we release a lot of water from the body, right, we also produce less urine because of the low blood pressure, right? So did you understand what are juxtaglomerular cells? So which cells produce the renin enzyme? They're called as yeah. Can you name the cells? Juxtaglomerular cells or juxtaglomerulus apparatus. They produce the enzyme renin. Right? Look at this. This is the afferent arteriole cells here, and the cells of the DCT. Together they are called as the juxtaglomerulus apparatus, which produces the renin. Okay, the enzyme renin is produced by this. Okay, so what will renin do? Renin, as I just now told you, that renin will activate what? Angiotensinogen into angiotensin 1. Angiotensin 1 is converted into angiotensin 2, which will cause vasoconstriction, which will eventually increase the peripheral resistance, and blood pressure is increased. It will also stimulate adrenal cortex to produce more and more aldosterone, right? Aldosterone will increase the sodium reabsorption. Blood water will follow. Blood volume will increase and blood pressure will also increase. This is something which we have already discussed previously. This is the repetition of all that, right? And then about the baroreceptors. What are baroreceptors? This is a question from cardiovascular system. Which arteries have baroreceptors? Nobody? Don't you remember the cardiovascular system? We discussed it there. Which arteries contain the baroreceptors? Yes, Adil. Noora Jindali, Munira Lotaibi, Wajdan Shatha. Nobody knows baroreceptors? We discussed the baroreceptor reflex in cardiovascular system. Baroreceptors are present in the important arteries of your neck. Carotid, absolutely. Very good, running, absolutely. The internal carotid artery, which supplies the blood to the brain, right? It contains the baroreceptors. Important arteries of your neck. The aorta contains baroreceptors, right? We discussed all this in cardiovascular system. You need to remember all this, right? And what is the function of baroreceptors? Once there's low blood pressure, okay, or low blood volume, so it brings information to the brain, right? So sympathetic nervous system, it not only acts on the kidneys, okay, it also causes vasoconstriction, which eventually increases peripheral resistance, and obviously the blood pressure will be increased. And the hypothalamic receptors, as they monitor that, oh, there's less blood volume, right? They will produce the posterior pituitary gland will produce the ADH hormone. ADH hormone will increase the water reabsorption, right, which will eventually cause increase in the blood pressure. Okay. This is something which we already discussed. What is the peripheral resistance? The amount of friction blood encounters as it flows through the vessels. This is the same thing, baroreceptors. See, this is the same diagram which we had in the cardiovascular system. If we have low BP, arterial walls are stretched less, increased sympathetic stimulation to blood vessels will constrict and BP will increase. The opposite, if blood pressure will increase, arterial walls will be stretched, the baroreceptor, the barometer reflector reflex recept, the reflex will reduce the sympathetic tone of the blood vessels. So obviously blood vessels will dilate and blood pressure will decrease. Right? This is something which we already discussed previously. Name two hormones which help in the regulation of blood volume and blood composition by acting on the kidneys. It is the ADH and the aldosterone. Okay, even though you might think that aldosterone regulates the sodium levels, right? But we know that as sodium is reabsorbed, water will follow. So this we can say that yes, it can maintain the blood volume and blood composition. Which organ is not a part of the cardiovascular system and plays an important role in regulating blood pressure? This was the same question in the cardiovascular system. It's the kidneys, right? So we are going to stop over here. This is the last slide which we are going to discuss for the semester. That's it. We're going to stop here. Okay, as I said that I will send the information on through email as well. Okay. So this will not take maintaining the asset base balance. So this was basically we were basically going to stop at here. So instead we will stop here. Is it clear to everyone? Yes, ladies. Do you have any questions?